Just so everybody knows, this meeting is now live on YouTube.
Sound check for me. Can you hear me, Pat?
I can hear you. You can go ahead and shut off your camera. I can hear you. Hello, Ben. Hello. You guys are on.
Hey, Pat, thank you.
Morning, Mr. Vice Chair. Actually, excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Did you get my message this morning about the motion language?
Let me check that real quick. I just looked at my email and did not see that, so let me check real quick.
Not in your email. It was a text message to your phone.
Oh, okay, that's why. I've looked at my phone this morning.
No worries, sir. Just wanted to let you know that I'll be handling the motion language this morning via PowerPoint. This will allow Sarah to focus on the conversation and provide legal advice without being interrupted.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me know that. So in that regard, Eric, on the one that has the most amount of amendments right now, which is the waterfowl, the sequence that we're going to go in is the original motion for that the department has, and then we'll take each amendment that I think are primarily coming from Commissioner Siebel after that. So we'll start with the original motion from the department and then go from there.
Understood, sir. I'll make that adjustment.
Okay.
Good morning, Pat.
Morning. How you doing today?
Great.
Good morning, Brian.
Everyone can hear me great. Perfect. Early there, Vice Chair.
Just a smidge.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, Bill.
A little early there for you there, Pat.
Yeah, just it's okay.
Okay.
I don't know about you, Bill. I don't have a lot of sympathy, but that's all right.
That's why I wasn't really going to address it.
Yeah, right.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
Morning, Jeff.
The one thing I will say is I had to close all the windows because the roosters will start here pretty soon. And that's been a continuous comment of why is all the roosters noise in the back? It's like, well, it kind of comes with where you live. Still looking for,
Good morning. I'm on, but I cannot get my camera to go.
okay,
I don't know why. I'm gonna log out and log back in.
gotcha.
Bill?
Yes, good morning.
Hey, I just wanted to make sure my audio is working.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks.
We got your picture now, Susan. Do we got your sound?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I have to use a different computer. Dang, Microsoft.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, as I realize we still have some time before we start the meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that I have all executive staff and all commissioners attending on at this time.
Perfect. Thank you, Pat. Or Eric. Wasn't sure if it was Pat or Eric that was talking there. And I'll just remind all the commissioners, everyone on board that we are recording.
Chair Tabor, what time is it there?
Well, it'd be 4:30 or coming on.
Nice.
Casey, we already established we don't have any sympathy for the vice chair, though.
Yeah, that's on the record.
Let's get that in the minutes.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Pat Tabor, Vice Chair of the Fish and Game Commission. I'm calling to order the April 17th Fish and Game Commission meeting, and I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe we are going to get flag up. There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you and good morning. I will be chairing the meeting today on behalf of the Fish and Game, and the chair is actually traveling today, so asked if I would step in. I'd like to start off by the approval of the minutes. We'll start off with a special meeting minutes of February 9th. Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion. If you had a chance.
I move to approve, Commissioner Siebel.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Siebel, a second by Commissioner Lane. Although, any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any, same sign? Motion carries. And now the meeting minutes of the regular meeting on February 16th.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the February 16th regular minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Burrows and a second by Commissioner Lane for approval. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we'd like to go into the commission expenses. If folks have had a chance to review that, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Siebel, seconded by Commissioner Lane, that we approve the expenses. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'd like to go into the commissioner report. We'll start off with you, Commissioner Burrows, and we'll just go in numerical order and I'll wrap it up.
All right. Mr. Chairman, on wildlife, biologists are currently conducting aerial spring green-up surveys for mule deer, bighorn sheep, and elk. Bears have been coming out a couple weeks early this year, but conflicts are low so far. 200-acre prescribed fire was conducted on the 3-mile WMA during the first week of April. In partnership with the Bitterroot National Forest and the DNRC, another 200-acre prescribed fire was conducted on the Blackfoot Clearwater WMA last weekend. And that was in partnership with the University of Montana Fire Center, DNRC, the Nature Conservancy, and the Blackfoot Challenge. These projects are aimed at improving forage for big game and reducing fuels. Communication education, the regional workshop for hunter, bow hunter, trapper education volunteer instructors is this week, April 20th in Missoula. We'll have approximately 100 volunteers in attendance from across the region. We'll be recognizing 2 instructors for 40 years of service. So thank you and congratulations to them. The conservation license and related new requirements continues to be a common question and priority outreach message across the state and region. And enforcement, Garrett Kokab, I think that's his name. I haven't met him yet. He graduated from the Law Enforcement Academy and is working full-time as the Sealy game warden. With nicer weather, there's been an uptick in angler activity and even some boats on area rivers. Wardens have been busy checking anglers and making a presence in the recreation sites. The Blackfoot Clearwater WMA will have a new opening day process for antler hunters this year. Instead of lining up along Highway 83, sometimes for weeks in advance, people are registering for an unlimited entry, and their entry order will be randomized. We've been working across divisions to make this a success, and we'll be asking for public feedback to adjust before the 2025 opener. Parks and Outdoor Rec. Park managers and maintenance staff are gearing up for a busy season with onboarding seasonal staff, recruiting empty positions, and getting sites open for the season. Fisheries, April and May are busy months for sampling and collecting information from our fisheries, and staff's been meeting with angling groups to update them on fishery status and scoping fishing regulations. And lastly, for staff, we have a new acting regional supervisor, Kendra McCloskey, and would like to give a shout out for Randy Arnold. He retired as the Region 2 supervisor in early May after working for FWP for 29 years. Randy started his career with FWP as a warden trainee in Missoula, then worked as a game warden in Forsyth and Helena, a criminal investigator, and a warden sergeant in Billings before serving as the regional supervisor in Missoula for the past 10 years. And he made this transition for me into the commission just really simple. He was always there. I could call him at any time and get information. So congratulations to him and wish him the best. And a report.
Before I go on to Commissioner Brooke, Commissioner Burrows, any meetings with NGOs?
Actually, yeah. March 11th, we have this Bitterroot Coalition down here that's been meeting, and that's a handful of different sportsman groups. This time was the Ravalli County Fish Wildlife Association, Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife, and the Foundation for Wildlife Management. I attended the Foundation for Wildlife Management banquet and also met with some of those folks prior to and after the meeting, discussing some of the trapping issues that they might be bringing forward. And then I met with the Ravalli County Fish and Wildlife Association at their meeting and also attended their banquet.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. Commissioner Brooke?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My report starts, I'll start off with the only NGO that I formally met with is Megan Bucking from the Montana State Parks Foundation, which brings me to my first update for Region 3. The land board just unanimously approved the donation of 26 acres adjacent to the Missouri Headwaters State Park. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks should be taking ownership sometime this spring. There's some issues and cleanup that remains to be done out there. If you get a chance to stop by, it's just off the interstate at Three Forks. It's a really, really cool new addition to the Headwaters State Park. I attended the annual Region 3 Mountain Lion season setting meeting. That was a very well attended. There was probably maybe 30 mountain lion hunters and all fish, wildlife, and park biologists across the region were there. I've been attending the fishing reg meetings, one in Bozeman and one in Townsend last night. A lot of participation in those regulation setting meetings, a lot of good public input. Fish biologists have pretty good rapport with most of those fishermen out there. So we've heard some very interesting comments about some of the proposed regulations for 2025 2026 season. I've been attending the regional wildlife meetings that they have in Region 3. All wildlife biologists for the region get together once a month for a roundtable where they talk about all the issues that are going on with spring surveys, what they're seeing and what they're not seeing, concerns, and learned a lot from those sessions. The elk surveys have concluded in Southwest Montana, Region 3. On average, the populations are showing up around 10% region-wide. So that's good news for hunters. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has launched a research effort where they're tagging fish in the Beaverhead, the Ruby, the Big Hole, and the Madison Rivers. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a lot of social media out there that shows, that's not showing, sorry, but it's a Tag Your It campaign, and there is a little tag on the fish. You can clip it, or you can take a picture of it and send the number in to MSU, and they're doing they're trying to figure out what is going on with the trout declines in these watersheds. Hunter education classes are in full swing so far this year. Volunteer instructors have held or scheduled classes in 10 different cities in Region 3. So great participation. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks also held a workshop for hunter, bow hunter, and trapper education instructors in Bozeman on March 23rd, and about 60 instructors attended. They're currently, Region 3 is scheduling bear aware education events around the state and the region, including the Museum of the Rockies on April 26th. And that wraps up my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Walsh.
Yes, good morning. I have no meetings to report with outside NGOs. The Great Falls office was very busy with licensing activity in March. The Region 4 team did a great job at keeping the lines short and providing excellent customer service. The Smith River float season has now begun, and this is the first year of human waste packout, the human waste packout requirement. Sadly, for those of us who've floated the Smith for a long time, the staff removed all the pit toilets last week. Grizzly bear activity is increasing with the warming temperatures, although cooled down last night. There have been a couple of cases of calf depredations, and one bear has been euthanized so far. The Region 4 staff hosted the fishing regulation scoping meeting at the Great Falls office on April 4th. There were 10 members of the public and several FWP staff in attendance. Good discussions at that meeting. Crews are completing various field monitoring activities, including sage-grouse lek counts, deer surveys, and fisheries surveys. The Freeze-Out Lake Wildlife Management Area was a popular resting stop for migratory waterfowl this season. The 2024 spring migration finished up with a record number of swans and light geese observed, both well above average. I think over 100,000 light geese. The Freeze-Out Lake WMA story map was updated daily by staff and extremely helpful for the public. This WMA is a popular place for the public to visit during this seasonal migration. Region 4 staff held 3 landowner appreciation dinners for those dedicated to access programs, one in Conrad on March 20th, Great Falls March 22nd, and Lewistown was held on March 27th. Final note, Game Warden Rod Duty retired after 34 years of service with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. Rod was very dedicated to his work and leaves some very big shoes to fill. On behalf of Region 4 and the Commission, thank you, Rod, for all your years of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walsh. Commissioner Siebel.
Thank you, Chair Tabor. Good morning to everyone. And Region 5 is, like everyone else, has been a really busy spring so far. Lots of fishery samplings happening in Yellowstone River, Rock Creek, obviously the Bighorn River, Upper Musselshell, just throughout the region, lots of sampling. Also had plenty of elk and deer surveys going on as well through the Green Up. Also started conducting sage-grouse lek counts, and now pheasant crow counts will be starting soon in Region 5. It's been a really busy winter at the Big Snowy Wildlife Management Area, which is relatively new to the region and a really exciting area. Ashley and the team have been working on water well drilling, solar pump, and water line installation for grazing pastures, and also mapping out the fencing, which is ready to go and ready to be installed hopefully this year. So we'll see more and more progress and improvements at that new wildlife management area, and I think it'll be great for the public. We did add a new support to our bear program in Region 5. We have a new bear technician named Oliver Tomey. He'll be joining Region 5. He's going to be based in Columbus, Montana, and we'll be supporting both Region 5 and Region 3, as I understand, out of Columbus. So excited to have Oliver on board and look forward to working with him. On the access side, we also had landowner appreciation dinners for the block management. We had 4 of them in the recent days. The really exciting thing, we have great participation in block management in Region 5. And the exciting thing at these dinners is we had 3 different ranches that were honored for 25 years in the block management program. 1999 is when they started. So just fantastic participation and just rock solid families and great partners with us at the department. Really excited. And we also had 3 other ranches that were honored for 20 years. So again, just amazing participation in Region 5, and really appreciate those ranches and their families for participating in the block management program. Like Susan said, we are also conducting bear awareness training and preparedness information. Had 1 meeting in Joliet this week, and we have 3 more planned in the region. I'll just make those announcements really quickly. 1 in Columbus on April 18th at 6 p.m., 1 in Pueblo Town on April 23rd at 6 p.m., and 1 at Red Lodge on April 25th at 6 p.m. If you need more information, call the Region 5 office, but definitely encourage everyone, as we see more and more bears in Region 5, to attend those events and really learn more about how to be prepared and how to deal with an encounter with a grizzly bear. On the enforcement side and the administration side, the wardens were fantastic in helping out the public get ready for the license deadline for the first drawing. They did a lot of help ahead of time to help out before the people got to the front desk. So good job to the wardens, a good job to the front desk at Region 5 to be able to help everyone and get that process done smoothly. And as far as I did not have any meetings with any official NGOs in since the last meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Siebel. Commissioner Lane.
Thank you, Chair Tabor. In Region 7, hunter and bow hunter education classes are in full swing. They're also getting new instructors up to speed, as well as reactivating veteran instructors. The 200 ed classes in Miles City were mostly full, and about 20 people participated. So it's always good to see that type of participation. The support staff was busy with their version of March Madness, with that being helping people with license applications, both on the phone as well as over the counter. They did report that it went well and that the online licensing system seemed to work a little bit better this year. Wildlife is finalizing 7 habitat conservation lease projects. These projects total close to 40,000 acres. So it's great participation there as well. But these are currently out for public comment. Also, biologists are busy flying spring flights to survey both deer and sage and sharp-tailed grouse. The initial deer flights are showing slightly higher numbers than last year, but they are still very early in this process. And for lack of being able to explain this any better, I'm just going to read this report that came in from Fisheries. 2 wild-produced larval pallid sturgeon were collected from the Tongue River in Miles City in 2023. These larval fish were genetically confirmed to be pallid sturgeon. 3 of the parents, 1 male and 2 females, were known adults with transmitters. A second unknown male without a transmitter was also identified as a parent. The 3 known wild parents live in the Missouri River at Williston, venturing up the Yellowstone River to spawn. All 3 successfully migrated through the intake bypass channel to continue migrations into the Tongue River. The approximate one-way distance 2 of these adult fish migrated was 205 river miles. One female migrated to Forsyth first and then back downstream to Miles City to enter the Tongue River, which is approximately 309 river miles from the Missouri River to the spawning site in the Tongue River. These results are the fruits of over 30 years of work with endangered pallid sturgeon and the success of the Intake Fish Passage project. So I thought that was just neat to be able to share that with everybody. Moving on to enforcement, wardens have been busy with residency cases where numerous violations have been detected and citations have been issued. And they are also attending hunter education classes and giving presentations. And I did not speak with any outside groups other than my cattle. And that wraps up my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lane. For Region 1, I have a few things to report. Colby Anton will be starting a black bear DNA collection project this spring. The goal of the project is to use DNA to estimate black bear densities of the region. And this is a statewide effort with the goal of improving the ability to assess our bear population status and the effects of our actions. And so this is a super important project and exciting one, in particular because of the manner in which it's being conducted. Learned a lot when they did the grizzly bear collection process. So I think there's a lot of similarities in the methodology of doing this using DNA from hair. So quite excited about that. The Region 1 staff is gearing up to gather wild West Slope cutthroat trout from the Flathead drainage to help establish a brood stock that will be focused on recreational fishing in Western Montana. This is a pretty big undertaking, and it will include a variety of different take methods, including trapping, netting, backpack, electrofishing, boat electrofishing, hook and line capture. And this will be going on over multiple years. Pleased to announce that Jacob Haberlock graduated from the academy and will now be our new Libby warden. I think that puts us within reach of actually being fully staffed. I believe we have one more opening, if I recall correctly. And then wildlife biologist Franz Engelfinger flew the Wild Horse Island to survey the bighorn sheep on the island and saw good increased numbers. That's important because the conservation herd is often used to augment herds elsewhere. You might have read in the press that we have the 30-day EA going out for the Great Montana Project. This would add 133,000 acre conservation easement, which is a pretty big deal. That you've heard me reference this before. Where we have all the historical Weyerhaeuser, then Plum Creek land that was chopped up into various ownership pieces. And the Region 1 staff, Lee Anderson and his access crew up there, they've been working really hard to get with a lot of these relatively new landowners and get them to participate in making those lands that have historically always been a very big part of the hunting lands available for hunters up in Region 1. So this is the first in hopefully a series of easements that will go through, and we're open for comment. And then finally, I believe it's May 2nd, we have our final CAC meeting. We usually close it out with a wonderful meeting in a state park. There's an overlooked park that's just a beautiful location, and if you guys ever get a chance to go to a Region 1 CAC meeting, you will be well fed, I can tell you that. So that'll be the last meeting of the CAC season before we roll into spring. As far as NGOs are concerned, I met with Montana Outfitters and Guides and Fishing Outfitters of Montana, both related specifically to the Swan River amendment that we'll be talking about later. Other than that, what I'd like to do is hand it over to Director Temple and ask that Director Temple address any issues that might have arose in Region 6 in that Chair Robinson wasn't able to report on activities in Region 6. Director Temple?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I don't have anything specific for Region 6. I will say, you've heard it's field season. Staff are extremely busy. doing the good work that they always do. Want to expand a little bit on some of the comments I heard about March. This was one of the smoothest March application periods we've had in recent years, and the front desk staff deserves a lot of credit for that. But some folks that you don't hear about a lot, the Licensing Bureau and the Technology Services Division revamped the online licensing system last year. And you may have noticed there was a buy what you had last year feature that people have been asking for, that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback out. So just a shout out along with the front desk staff to the Technology Services Division for a job well done, along with the front desk staff. We are in the middle of budget construction for the upcoming session, the next biennium. The agency will be developing its budget priorities for presentation and review by this body in June. So that will be coming your way at your next meeting. So, and that concludes what I have, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Director Temple. So we'll go back to the agenda itself, and I believe that our first item that we'll be discussing is licensing. And so I'd like to invite Emily Cooper, the Unit Chief Licensing, to go through what she has on for us.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Emily Cooper. I'm the licensing chief here at Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. The first agenda item that you see this morning is to initiate rulemaking for a resident super tag. This is related to House Bill 456 that was passed in the 2023 legislative session. And that bill provides for a free super tag opportunity for one of three species, a moose, a sheep, or a goat, license for any resident purchasing a general deer or general elk license this year. So this particular agenda item is to initiate the rulemaking to better define the parameters of that lottery. This particular lottery is different than our other super tag lottery for the other 8 species that we have, and is just in addition to and only for residents. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions regarding proposal or going out for administrative rule? I will entertain a motion.
Chair Tabor. I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission approve initiation of rulemaking for the free resident super tag.
I second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lane and seconded by Commissioner Siebel. Any other comments or questions before we go out to public comment? I just need to check with legal. Do we go out to public comment on the initiation of the rulemaking or only when it comes back?
Vice Chair Tabor, you go out on the initiation as well.
Okay, perfect. Anybody in the regional offices have anybody that would like to comment on the super tag license proposal? Seeing none, do we have any online? Who's my online assistant today?
I'm here for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Eric, do we have anybody online that would like to comment on this?
I have no hands raised at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect, thank you. All right, any other questions or discussion on it? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And let's see, did you have another one, Emily?
I did, sir.
Okay, please go right ahead.
Yep. The next item that you see is to select the species for that resident super tag. So again, in conjunction with House Bill 456 from this past session in 2023, it provides that the commission select which species will be provided as that resident super tag for that particular year. So this proposal includes for 2024, that selection would be a moose. For 2025, that selection would be a sheep. And for 2026,
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Any comments? Commissioner Siebel.
Chair Tabor, I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission vote to approve the issuance of one Shirus moose license through a lottery draw to an eligible resident deer or elk license holder with an annual rotation in years to follow as presented by the department.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Siebel and seconded by Commissioner Walsh. any other questions or comments regarding the motion? All right, we'll go out to public comment. Anybody in the regional offices that have a comment regarding this motion for species? Eric, anybody online that would like to comment?
I have no hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Hearing no comments, we'll go for a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Great. We will go into fisheries. I will start off by the commissioner proposed amendment, and then I believe that Dr. Rice has an update regarding the funding cycle. Or excuse me, the drought. I apologize for that. Let me just find my notes here and bouncing all about here. Here we go. So basically what I'm going to do is just start off with a motion and get a second, then I'll do an explanation, and then we'll go out for public comment. So I propose to change the current fishing regulations specific to the Swan River, where we will go back to instituting a catch and release for cutthroat and rainbow trout, eliminating the ability to have 5 daily and in possession. And then from Piper Creek downstream to Swan Lake, artificial lures only, with a clarification of single pointed hooks only, no treble or double. Were we not recording? I don't know if everybody heard that, but so single pointed hooks only, no treble or double hooks. Anglers may remove treble or double hooks from lure and replace them with a single hook, or the shanks may be cut off the other hooks points to leave a single hooks. Lures with multiple hook attachments may be used, but any treble hook must be replaced with a single hook. So let me just give you the, so that is the motion. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
I think I heard Commissioner Walsh on that one. So it was seconded by Commissioner Walsh. Let me just give you a background and some understanding as to why I brought this forward. So I was approached by a series of constituents in Region 1 that articulated genuine concern about the population of fish on the river and the notable reduction in productivity of being on the river since the institution of a catch and keep for rainbows. Once that happened, what I requested then was I had a pretty lengthy conversation with the fishery staff in Region 1 and started doing a lot of background checking as to why this had occurred. It was part of a very important process that the department had developed through its statewide fishing management plan for the protection of endemic fish, and in particular the West Slope cutthroat. And so it's kind of a uniform policy across the state to do this in fisheries where there's a shared population of rainbows and cutthroat. And so they're applying it uniformly across all river and waterways in the western part of the state. And that's how it happened. And, you know, nobody is going to argue, in particular with me, regarding West Slope cutthroat and the importance of protecting them and trying to bring them back. And that's super, on a personal basis. I've participated for many years in my career when I was an active outfitter in that process. So I firmly believe in him. But the Swan River is a very unique area. I happen to know this river extremely well. I lived there for 20 years. I guided and outfitted on this river for 18 years. So I know this river very well. And when the people that came forth said that it's down, it's something that I would have recognized would be the case based on the uniqueness of the river, how it's accessed and everything else. So that's when I started digging in and looking at the history. You can see that there's a number of facts that are part of the rationale and background. I trust that the commissioners have had the chance to read all that. And, you know, to really summarize why I'm bringing it forward is I want to retain the quality of the recreational experience on the Swan River for future generations. The reality is keeping in 5 rainbow trout on that river will do nothing, literally nothing, to bring back the cutthroat. And there is no active portion of a plan being put forth that's actually going to try to reintroduce or bring about a stronger, more robust population of cutthroat. There's no real plan in place to do that. The only plan at all in place is just to stop catching rainbow. So that's not going to, you know, at a percentage of less than 1% of pure cutthroat on the river, just keeping rainbow isn't going to bring the cutthroat back, and they haven't been there for quite some time. So then the question is, well, as a fishery and what our goals and our objectives are to create a quality fishery experience, and be mindful of the fact that a lot of fisheries are part of the economic engine of rural areas. Why wipe out the fishery in its entirety by taking the last really catchable fish off the river? And so for that reason, I felt compelled to bring forward this motion. Some folks have asked, well, why don't you just wait? Because we are going through the 2-year cycle. And the fact of the matter is a lot of folks feel like we can't sustain a whole nother year, that it'll just put us deeper in a hole relative to trying to maintain a viable population of rainbows on that river. So it, although I won't use the term emergency, it really has a sense of urgency from the standpoint that it really can't wait yet another season. You can see the response that was done by the department, which pretty much articulates the importance of staying with the program of protection of the wild fish. But most notable to me was the very last sentence. It says, "This said, the department does not anticipate significant or irreparable harm to the fish resource if the commission adopts this amendment." So in that regard, what I'd like to do now is go out to public comment and hear from the folks. I do see that Director Temple has raised his hand. So Director Temple.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just wanted to let the commission know and yourself that Leo Rosenthal and Mike Hensler, our Region 1 Fisheries folks, are online and available if there are any questions, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Director Temple. Commissioner Brooks.
Okay. My question, you know, fundamentally, this sounds like a great idea, but the reg books are out. And so if you have a family out fishing and they've got trout in their creel because as of today it's legal, what's going to happen to them if tomorrow they get caught with fish? I mean, are they going to be fined if this happens?
So, and if we need to, we can get somebody in from enforcement. But typically what happens when we have a change, because this is exactly what one of the decision we made on, I believe it was either Big Hole or the Beaverhead, or maybe both, where we did a mid-season change, even though reg books were published. The department will put out ancillary or supplemental information through all the regular channels, including postings. And so on the Swan River in particular, there's put in places where folks fish. That's probably where notices will be put up in the form of a placard or a flyer that says regulations have changed. As it relates to enforcement, I imagine we could get somebody on enforcement to get on the line and ask that question. But Phil, I see that you have lit up. Do you want to address that question? If in fact the commission passes this today, and then subsequently somebody in the field encounters somebody that is in possession of fish, which would be in violation of a decision, how would law enforcement handle that?
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, every situation is of course unique, but this is fairly common when we have a new regulation passed or something that passes after the regulations are printed. And our approach is always with new regulations or changes, it's always to start with education. And usually we do education for a year or so, and then perhaps issue warnings later on. And so we definitely take the circumstances into consideration and apply discretion. And our efforts are normally focused on education in the beginning.
Commissioner Brook, or that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? So we'll start off with the regional offices. Just go in sequence of regions. So Region 1.
Thank you, Commissioner Tabor. We do have a few folks here. We'll let them go one by one.
Try to go about 2 minutes if you can.
Can they? Am I live?
Yep, you're live.
All right. Oh, whoops. Good morning, Vice Chair Tabor and members of the commission. My name is Ryan Stoltz. I live here in Big Fork, Montana. I'm a licensed outfitter here in Montana and one of the commercial permit holders on the Swan River. I'm here today to express concern for the resource, specifically the bag limit of 5 rainbow trout. During my guide and outfitter career, I've seen the Swan River have catch and release regulations, and then present day have seen the regulations change to a 5 fish bag limit. Therefore, I have personally witnessed the changes of the overall fish count. Unfortunately, the regulation changes allowing to keep trout couldn't have come at a worse time. Virtually the same time the regs changed, our local area experienced a massive influx of both new permanent residents and just overall tourism. This unfortunate timing and combination has resulted in a very negative impact of the overall fish count on the Swan River. I personally think that everyone here can agree that we want the resource, the Swan River, to remain a great spot to recreate for many years into the future. Let's see. I think that by placing a catch and release rule back in effect, we will do nothing but help this goal stay true. Tourism is the second largest industry in the great state, following only agriculture. By placing catch and release rule, the economy will have a positive impact for years to come. Furthermore, in recent years, we have experienced some lower water levels and higher water temperatures. My point being, the trout that call this river home already have enough issues that we cannot control. There's no reason to put any more unnecessary stress on the trout in the Swan River. By placing the catch and release order in effect, we will be doing nothing but helping the remaining trout in the river, which I think should be the overall goal. I want to thank the commission today for listening to us today and for both all your time and hard work in the past and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to fix our camera real quick. If you just give me a sec, we're having a camera issue. Okay. Whoever's next, come on up. State your name and where you're from.
Morning, Vice Chair Tabor and members of the commission. My name is Andy Guy, and I'm here representing MOGA, Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. I live in Swan Lake and have been fishing the Swan for 25 seasons. I have seen a drastic decline in the rainbow population since COVID and the regulation change in 2021. Campgrounds are packed with out-of-state anglers that are just not educated on the different types of trout in the Swan system. They don't know the difference between a rainbow, a cutbow, a bull, or a brook trout. And we do not have any pure West Slope cutthroats in the Swan. We can't fish for bull trout. There's no cutthroats to fish for, so we need to protect the only fish that we can actually catch, which is the rainbow. And the rainbow has been in the Swan since the 1920s. We have plenty of lakes in the area, to name a few: Loon, Van, Peck, Shea, Horseshoe, where anglers that want to harvest trout have options. We need to make this change before it's too late for future generations. I mean, we have a chance right now to do what's right and to save this fragile fishery. It's just, there's not a lot of fish per mile up there. It's you know, and anyway, I could go on, but I want to thank you guys for all your hard work, and we appreciate everything you do, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person. Step on up, folks.
Good morning, Vice Chair Tabor, members of the commission. My name is Jason Lanier, Lanier. I live in Big Fork. I'm also an outfitter and permit holder up to Swan. I've been fishing up there since the mid-late 90s, and like everybody else here, I've noticed a big decline in the rainbow trout population as of late with the COVID refugees and the bag limit. And just want to express my concern, like everyone else, that it seems like it's declining to the point where it's not even really a viable fishery or recreation resource at this point. I know there's been efforts in the past to stock hatchery cutthroats all through the drainage, and despite that, we rarely catch a cutthroat up there, or even a hybrid for that matter. So realistically, rainbow trout's the only thing left in the river to fish for. So I think we have an obligation to maintain that and the recreation fishery in general for the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, Vice Chair, Mr. Tabor, and Commission members. My name is Rich Birdsell, and I am a Region 4 Director for MOGA, as well as a local outfitter here in Region 1. I do not operate on the Swan River, but I'm here to support those that do and the general public. I'm here to support wild trout. And this is an easy decision here, you guys. The Swan River has low trout numbers. There are no cutthroats. Nobody loves cutthroat trout more than myself, and would support anything that would bring our cutthroat population back. But the reality is that the Swan River is a rainbow trout fishery, and low numbers at that. So I could mirror everything these guys are saying. I'm here to support the trout and this amendment to make it a catch and release fishery. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the region, in the regional office?
Vice Chair and Commission members, my name is Mark Fuller. I am an outfitter here in the Flathead Valley. I'm not a permit holder on the Swan, but much like Rich there, I'm here to support the people that do make a living on that wonderful fishery. I also sit as the Region 1 Board Director for the Fishing Outfitters Association of Montana, and we represent over 1,000 guides and outfitters in the state of Montana. I would encourage the Commission to approve the regulation changes for the Swan River in Region 1. We're known for having several drainages that offer fishing opportunities and are managed for native cutthroat trout that we are all very proud of, and that we hope to continue to see flourish in the future in appropriate drainages. However, there are drainages where this management decision where we promote cutthroat trout doesn't make sense, and the Swan River appears to be one of these drainages. If you fish this river, you talk to guides and outfitters that work on this river, or chat with regional biologists assigned to the Swan River, you quickly realize it is a rainbow trout fishery. Furthermore, like a lot of drainages in the Swan or in our region, the Swan is a low density fishery and is not home to ample populations of cutthroat trout or any other trout in that matter. A couple of years ago, when the regulations were changed to allow the keep of rainbows, there was an unintentional consequence of reducing the already low trout population. Although we do not have before and after population estimates on this fishery, outfitters and guides who spend a lot of time on the water have seen a decline in the trout population. I hope in the future we will get a better idea of the river's baseline fisheries data. But until then, I believe it is best to make the entire drainage catch and release to ensure that this fishery is viable in the future. And like the rest of these folks here, please know that we really do appreciate your time and effort that you all put in to make this state a wonderful place for wildlife and fisheries. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Anyone else in the Region 1 office want to testify?
Good morning. My name is Matt DiPaolo with Crane Mountain Guide Service. I've been guiding and outfitting on the Upper Swan for 25 years. I've been catching and releasing these fish for that long. I just want to say, Commissioner Tabor, I want to say everything you said was spot on, and you're absolutely correct. And I'm a major proponent to catch and release, obviously, as a fly fishing guide. It would be a conflict of my interest to take anything out of the river. I sit in a boat and stare at the water, and have done so for a long time in hopes of fulfilling the expectations of the tourists and the people that come with me. And it's difficult as it is, judging from the general skill sets we get. But it makes it even more difficult when, you start seeing the fish that you've been petting and releasing get gone through hook and cook. And, I think it's terrible to do this. I believe in catch and release. I'm a major proponent of catch and release. I think I said that. But another thing is, and I think that I would like to ask that it be borne in mind that catch and take as a conservation effort to prefer one species over another is madness. I mean, it is effective to a degree, but you have to keep in mind that as a professional, it's difficult to identify fish anymore the way the hybridization has gone, and to release them. And some people want photographs, et cetera. But for the general public, the non-professionals, the plumbers, the electrician, whoever, the citizenry that has every right to the resource, to entrust in them the ability to catch and release effectively, that fact just doesn't exist. And I have been accompanying people for years, and I'm always disappointed whenever I allow someone to handle a fish, thinking that possibly they know what they're doing. They rarely do. And so by inviting this kind of a conservation effort is going to end up killing the wrong species for sure. And in the case of the Upper Swan with the bull trout, it's very rare to catch pure bulls anymore. Most of the dorsal fins are mottled. And so and also with the cuts and the cut bows and the rainbows, it's pretty tough anymore to really see what we're handling. And so I just like to leave it with this and offer, like everyone else, my appreciation for what you're doing. We're down the right path.
Your 2 minutes is up. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Anybody else? Going once? That's all we have for Region 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Are there any other commenters in the regional offices, regions 2 through 7? All right, then, Eric, we'll move to the online folks.
I have 4 hands raised, Mr. Vice Chair. We'll start with Michael Bias.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bias. Good morning.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioners, excuse me. My name is Mike Bias, B-I-A-S. I'm the Executive Director of the Fishing Outfitters Association of Montana. We provided written comments, but I'd also like to reiterate some of those comments at this time. The current regulation, first proposed by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and adopted by the Commission, was done at the August 2019 Commission meeting for the 2020 fishing regulations. Prior to that adoption, fishing on the Swan was catch and release for cutthroat trout and rainbows since the early 90s, nearly 30 years. Interestingly, in the 2020 fish regulation proposal document authored by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks staff and presented to the Commission at that time, the scoping summary stated that, and I quote, "This proposal was not included in the online public scoping survey," unquote, with only the August 2019 Commission meeting available for public comment on the original proposal to allow harvest of rainbows. We think strongly the original proposal was not properly presented to the public, nor was it given proper time frame to allow the public to comment. These days, we hear a lot about good science and science-based, but Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has conducted no work on the Swan River in decades, neither population estimates or creel surveys. The only science work conducted on the river was U.S. Forest Service work conducted by Beth Gardner, and she showed that from 2014 to 2022, relative abundance of cutthroat trout declined from 2% to 0%, concluding that cutthroat trout appear to be functionally extirpated from the river. Functionally extirpated in this context means a management perspective that, short of a massive intentional restoration effort to recover cutthroat in the Swan, no fish harvest regulation alone could restore cutthroats to the Swan River. The biological rationale given to allow harvest of rainbow trout, often throughout the West and on the Swan River, is that, and I quote, implementing catch and release for cutthroat trout and promoting harvest of rainbows is intended to help the cutthroat trout population. Rainbow trout are thought to be partially responsible for the decline of cutthroats, and reducing rainbows through harvest will help the cutthroat. However, opponents of this amendment argue that even now there is no evidence that the current regulation is having any deleterious effect on the population of rainbows in this system. And we think, without the knowledge of how harvest is affecting any—
Mr. Bias, I appreciate your comments, but your 2 minutes is up. I apologize.
Thanks. We support your amendment, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Next up.
Mr. Chairman, we have MOGA office.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Commissioner Chair, and can you guys hear me there in the office?
Yes, we can.
So I've got a sort of a lengthy prepared statement here, but I don't know that there's much more that I could add. The Region 1 office, the statement by Mike Bias, I really think that we fully support as an organization this proposal, and that the information stands on its face that there is a definite need to protect this fishery. So we've heard extensively from association members here at MOGA. We've had lengthy discussions with people who support that fishery. I personally fished that area as a kid, and so it means something to me personally as well. I think supporting this proposal is the right thing to do. I think it helps to sustain the recreational activity and the economic support of that area for years to come. We urge the commission to adopt this proposal and protect that fishery, and that's it. I don't want to add more to it or go further into it. I think it's just the right thing to do for this fishery. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, could you state your name, please? We just have MOGA office. So
my name is Will Israel. It is WILLISRAEL. I'm the executive director for the Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Israel. Who's next?
Mr. Chairman, I have Scott Vollmer.
Go ahead, Mr. Vollmer.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tabor, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Scott Vollmer, VOLLMER for the record, and I come to you today as the Vice President of Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. I had some prepared statements too, but frankly, I think my colleagues have said it better than I can, so I'm just going to quickly add in one thing, and that is with all due respect to Montana Trout Unlimited, you've just heard the comments from the outfitters and guides, and our industry does not describe the rainbow fishery in the Swan as flourishing. To the contrary, you've just heard what everyone had to say, and there are some major concerns there. So it is clear to us at MOGA that based on the best evidence that we have, that there's an immediate conservation threat here if the harvest of rainbows is allowed to continue. And it's also clear that the Swan is not, nor will it ever be, a system where measures should be applied that harm a wild cold water species, rainbows, for a potential West Slope cutthroat recovery, especially since pure strain cutthroat are extirpated, sorry, tough word, from the system. there simply are more appropriate places to do that. I'm going to be mindful of your time and wrap up right now. And I'd like to thank you for your consideration and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next testifier.
Mr. Chairman, I have Jeff Lucas.
Go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
All right, can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Tabor, members of the commission, good morning. My name is Jeff Lucas, the Conservation Director with Montana Wildlife Federation. We represent over 5,000 folks from across the state, and we're the oldest conservation organization in Montana. We appreciate the ability to comment today. While it is possible that the catch and release proposal for the Swan River may have some merit, it does run contrary to the state fisheries management plan, and it adds to the list of proposed amendments outside of the scoping meeting process for fishing regulations and statewide management plans. Having spoken with the proponent that brought this proposal to the vice chair, we do understand his concern. However, this proposal would result in confusion for the public, as fishing regulations for this year have already been printed and are in the public's hands. This will probably result in wardens being burdened with enforcing a rule that is contrary to what's in the regulation book. MWF would like to see data that supports an emergency regulation proposal, or have the proposal go through the normal process that fish regs are currently going through with a robust commentary period. This would allow for complete and accurate information to be made available to all, providing an opportunity for all to properly evaluate. We don't feel that this proposal meets the exact requirements for an emergency regulation change that is required for such a proposal. We do understand the reasoning behind this proposal, but we're hard pressed to support one that is out of the regulation process and does not have a better justification than it just feels like the right thing to do to some stakeholders. MWF can support regulations such as this one when the science backs it up. And we hope to see that science so that we can. We suggest that the commission tables this proposal for the next round of regulations and backs it up with good data that allows the public to understand that there's an issue that needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers, Eric?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more, Clayton Elliott.
Go ahead, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Clayton Elliott, ELLIOTT, representing Montana Trout Unlimited, and I appreciate the opportunity to comment today. And coming from Butte, where I don't think we have an elephant on the streets today, but it's still early. Mr. Chair, and I greatly appreciate your perspective and the opportunity to have this discussion, and appreciate the phone call that we had and the work that we've done together on the Swan. And I don't want our comments to be contrary to that intent. I think let me start with a couple of things I think we know. I think we know that we need some more credible and publicly available data, one of which could be some creel surveys and assessments to better understand the nature of use on the Swan, particularly related to angler harvest, because I think that's a big gap in information. That's been a gap in some other locations on the Jefferson, for example, where I have some concerns, and the suggestion has been to go out and do creel surveys. We need some better population estimates and modeling and assessments. And I think we need more public discussion and shared learning through this process. I'm not necessarily opposed to the opportunity to learn. And I think that what this amendment highlights is that there is some disagreement. There is some lack of shared understanding of where we're at and where we could go with better information. And that's really where I think at the heart of this, we have an active scoping process for the 2025-2026 fishing regs. We have that open scoping process that I think we could go through. We could better understand this, and I think we could bring to the commission a more well-baked proposal in terms of the public comment, support, and shared understanding. Substantively, I'm not right there in agreement on the catch and release piece. I'm not saying that we can't be, but again, I think going through the regular order process is a better process related thing. We've gone through fishing regulations in 2020 in the public comment. We supported this regulation. We've gone through a fish planning process. We're going through a fish reg process to begin the biennial process. A commitment that was made was that we were going to reduce the number of off the cuff changes to the regulations to truly emergency and stick to the regulation process. And I think that's where we should go from here. Again, I look forward to working with everybody in this room. It gives me no pleasure to be on opposite sides of good friends and trusted partners in this. We are on opposite sides today. I'm not saying that's where we're always going to be. So let's give this some more time. And that's at the heart where I'm asking this commission to reject the amendment today, but not reject this conversation, because I think we have more learning to do together.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. The 2 minutes is up. Thank you. Any other commenters, Eric?
I have no further hands up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Sure.
Okay.
Vice Chair Tabor.
Yes, Commissioner Walsh.
Yeah, just a quick comment or observation. I think we heard this during the discussion about the big hole in Beaverhead as well. And I guess for me, I support this amendment. And the reason why is we haven't heard, we have heard that there's not a lot of biological data to support a 5 fish limit on rainbow trout in this river. And more importantly, we have fragile bull trout in the river. And I just hope that as a department and commission, we can move beyond the thinking of, when in doubt, let's just keep a 5 fish bag limit and allow anglers to use treble hooks and methods of take that might result in more mortality for especially for bull trout. So anyway, thanks for bringing this amendment forward, and I support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Walsh. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Siebel.
Vice Chair Tabor, I also want to voice my support for this amendment, and reading through the comments and reading through your amendment and the rationale. I tend to agree, the one size fits all. I love the idea of simplification with the statewide management plan and applying that, but clearly this seems to me to be a region and a river in particular that needs some special treatment, especially right now. And I think I see the benefits of this much outweighing the harm of the benefits of passing the amendment and limiting the take definitely outweighs the potential harm. So I'm going to support this amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Siebel. Any other comments from commissioners?
Mr. Vice Chairman.
Commissioner Burrows.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I agree. I appreciate Mr. Lucas and Mr. Elliott's comments, but if we have a fishery that's potentially being jeopardized there, I agree. Let's get some creel studies. Let's understand what's going on there. But I don't think if you have that potential jeopardy on that fishery, I think we continue to study it, but let's put some safeguards in place while we do those studies. So I agree with the other commissioners, and I will also support the amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. Any other comments by commissioners? I'd just like to wrap up by making a few comments. One thing I would like to do is compliment the number of people that got involved. I kind of balk a little bit that we haven't had enough public discord on this. There was plenty of opportunity to look at it. It was an isolated issue, and plenty of folks opined on it. So I think it actually got the level of scrutiny that it didn't get when it was originally proposed and passed by the commission. I particularly want to compliment both the Montana Outfitters Guides Association and Fishing Outfitters. I hope the commissioners got a chance to read their letters, because those letters went into great depth and had excellent information. It wasn't all anecdotal. It really brought together some of the important elements. And I think one of the lost concepts here, I believe some of the testifiers referred to it, but I know this all too well being on this river. I think the amount of cut bows that are being pulled out mistakenly because they are in fact identified as rainbows is alarming. And given that the cut bows are part of the conservation process and we need them to stay in the river, one has to question whether we're better off just not taking anything out in order to protect the cut bows versus taking rainbows out and then knowing that several are going to wind up being taken out mistakenly. And that happens all the time. And I believe we heard one outfitter indicate he's been on the river for I don't know how many years, and even he at times has to do 2 and 3 looks at a fish to decide exactly what it is because of the uniqueness of the hybridization that's going there. So I compliment everybody's efforts on this and appreciate it. And if there's no other comments, we'll bring it to a vote. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I believe that we have, Dr. Rice was unable to make the meeting today, so we have Chief Zach Shattuck, who is going to give us a drought update for fisheries.
Vice Chair Tabor, thank you for that. Commissioners, Director Temple, my name is Zach Shattuck. I'm the Acting Fisheries Management Bureau Chief, and yes, I will be giving a drought update. This is an update to start the season. More regular meetings will be had at the beginning of May to look at these weekly, but I will run through the regions and just give an update starting the season. For Region 1, all drainages are looking similar or lower to conditions seen last year. February was a good precipitation month for most drainages. These drainages remain in the high 60s to 70% of median. The reservoirs in the regions have released less water and held minimum elevations in anticipation of lower runoff. For Region 2, snow water equivalents are at the 60 to 75% of median, despite recent moisture. There's little mid-elevation snow in the valleys. Groundwater levels are low, and the current projections are for a reduced spring snowmelt and a lower than normal, stream flow condition. Late snowfall, summer rains could alleviate some of those, but generally a lower moisture year. In Region 3, snowpack averages in the upper Missouris are between 75 and 82%. The lack of low elevation snow, though, will be seen throughout much of the region. Because of that, they believe all the reservoirs will be at expected fills for 24, regardless of kind of the snowpack due to last year's conditions, but things will continue to be reduced throughout the summer. In Region 4, the Missouri River drainage has improved. We will see Canyon Ferry maintain the recommended minimum flow of 4,100 CFS below Holter through the summer, and the Missouri headwaters are at 82% of median for snow water equivalent. Snowpack is poor, though, throughout the rest of the region. The Smith River is at 72% of median. The Sun is at 66% of median. Although Gibson reservoirs, most probable scenarios that they're predicted to fill. The Marias is probably worst off at 61% of median, and Tiber Reservoir is looking to be about 6 feet below full base elevation, and with a constant 400 CFS release. In Region 5, late season snowfall has boosted some of the snowpack conditions throughout the region. They're sitting closer to a 30-year median of snow water equivalent, somewhere in the 76 to 95% for most basins. Reservoirs in the basin should reach full pool, and anticipating an abnormally dry, moderate drought conditions in the Mussel Shell, and are currently having discussions with groups in that basin. For Region 6, much of the region is in drought or developing drought status. At March 20th, the snow water equivalent above Fort Peck was at 69% of average, and the reservoir currently sits at 2231, full pools at 2250, and the basic forecast projects the reservoir to drop approximately 7 feet by late summer. And then finally, for Region 7, no intended needs are noted for drought-related restrictions or closures between now and June. If snowpack remains low, though, flows in the Yellowstone River and much of the state will see low flows and possibly problematic conditions July through September. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shattuck. Appreciate that. I believe that wraps up anything relative to fisheries. We're going to move on to wildlife, and I'd like to invite Brian Wakeling to take our first topic.
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, and Mr. Acting Chair. Um, members of the commission. The first item that Wildlife has this morning, is the, 2024-25 migratory game bird regulations. These are, regulations that we bring before the commission each year in April. This has been part of our biennial season setting process, although we bring this to the commission on an annual basis. As being part of our biennial process, we included a lot of the ideas and concepts and things as we went through our biennial season setting, the scoping sessions that we had. But the one thing that really complicates are migratory game birds. And, migratory game birds, those are, these are the things that we think of. Could be cranes, snipes, doves, ducks, geese, swans, and coots. I mean, it's just an array of both what we call webbed migratory and webless migratory. And they're all governed by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And they're also governed by the frameworks and the federal frameworks that are established through both the Central Flyway and the Pacific Flyway. Montana's has the indubitable honor of sharing two different flyways, and so we work with two of the four flyways that operate within the U.S. So there's a lot of regulations and a lot of things that we kind of complicate both the department and the commission's authority to make some degree of decisions. An example, oftentimes you'll hear people speak about, dove season, if we could just start it before September 1st, why don't we do that? Well, September 1st deadline is part of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And the Migratory Bird Treaty Act is a treaty with 5 nations. And so trying to change something as simple as a single date is complicated in that we'd have to renegotiate an international treaty. In this day and age, trying to get something through the U.S. Congress is a challenge on a good day. In the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, it might be a bigger challenge than we'd be willing to tackle. That's an extreme example, but there's a lot of aspects of what we deal with that are subject to those frameworks. I mentioned there's 2 flyways, the Central Flyway and the Pacific Flyway. Would mention that Ken McDonald is our rep on the Pacific Flyway, and I am our rep on the Central Flyway. And so we participate in those meetings, work with those groups, and we also have a number of staff that work with us that are really the technical experts. And I would like to acknowledge Faye McNew is on the call today. So if there's any really nitty-gritty questions the commission may have regarding the frameworks, she's far more expert in that than I am. She's our waterfowl biologist and our representative to the Central Flyway primarily. But as I mentioned, this was part of our biennial season setting ideas. And so what we did this past year, right about a year ago, we started collecting ideas that we had heard from the public and just started trying to capture those ideas and roll them into a series of meetings that we called, we hadn't even really formulated what we called proposals at that time. We were just talking about concepts. And one of the concepts that we had, it wasn't the first time it had been brought up, but a closure along 87 miles of the Yellowstone River, mostly in Region 7. That closure has been in place since 1958, and it originally was put in place in 1958 because of the low numbers of waterfowl, primarily geese, that occurred at that point in time. One of the things that we've been very successful as a wildlife profession is restoration of a lot of waterfowl species, and waterfowl are far more abundant than they were in 1958. And one of the ideas that surfaced was, would you consider lifting that closure? From a biological standpoint, there is no need to retain that closure. A lot of people are concerned about disturbance levels that may occur by opening the Yellowstone River to waterfowl hunting. We have other sections of the river that are open, and we have waterfowl densities in some of those areas that are greater than what currently exists within the closure. Anglers can use that. Anybody that wants to use it, as long as they're not actually hunting waterfowl, can access it. And so, from a biological standpoint, we don't anticipate any negative implications as a result of opening that section. So that was one of the concepts, something we used we shared at our 34 public meetings that we held across the state last summer. We also put together a 1-question survey that we selected 1,000 randomly selected waterfowl hunters and sent it to them and asked them whether or not they supported lifting the closure or not. We did not get a lot of comments through the public meetings, but the comments we did receive were supportive. We didn't get a huge response to our survey of 1,000. We had 123 responses, but of the responses that we received, overwhelmingly people were in support of it. And so we went ahead and put that as part of our proposal, something we again shared in November as we were doing our final questions for this. But since that time, there has been a substantial amount of feedback from the public, largely in opposition to lifting the closure. We did not hear that prior to the preparation of the proposal. All we had heard prior to that was largely support for the idea. And so, the department's recommendation does still include lifting that closure. Biological, we don't anticipate a negative impact, but certainly there's a lot of strong opinion out there that the commission is considering. So there was only a couple of changes that the department is recommending to our waterfowl regulations compared with what we had seen in prior years. And so the one other thing that we had talked about was the sandhill crane seasons. And we wanted a very minor change there. What we're recommending in this case is there is a portion of the sandhill crane hunt in Stillwater County that probably it was largely expected to be part of the mid-continent population, mostly lessers. The season that it's part of is an over-the-counter season that hunters can have access to 3 licenses, harvest 3 animals a day, bag limit of 9. But by the time the season opens in late September, most of the sandhills have migrated through there. And so what our biologists believe is that most of these are part of the Rocky Mountain population, so greater sandhills, if you will. And so what we're proposing is a minor change there, and this is something we had to run through both flyways because it straddles that flyway boundary. But we got approval from both of them. And essentially what we want to do is move that into the permit hunt. And so by moving it into the permitted hunt, what that allows is an earlier season starts on September 1st then. And it's far more likely that the sandhills will be present when the season starts. And so at that point in time, with a September 1 start, despite the fact that the license would only allow for the take of 2, the chances are that there's far more likelihood that the sandhill cranes will be present when the hunt takes place. So those are the two primary changes that the department's recommending as part of our season recommendation package. There's also real specific information in there regarding, when the season dates are, Pacific Flyway, Central Flyway, and there's 2 zones within the Central Flyway. One of the other things I should mention that we've provided the commission and the public with is some of the background. Back in 2020, we had a question regarding how we wanted to manage our seasons and our splits and within those season dates. And so the department conducted a survey, a far more intensive survey than the one we did this past summer. And in that one, we were able to take a look at preferences for simplicity versus, whether or not we wanted more splits, longer splits, and almost without fail, with the exception of Zone 2 within the Central Flyway, almost without fail, regardless of the degree of avidity that individual waterfowl hunters express about themselves, the plurality of people responding to those supported less complexity and fewer splits, just having a single continuous season. And the department made some changes to our recommendations in 2021, and that's largely the season structure that the commission sees today. I know that there are a couple of amendments that have been proposed. I'll certainly be glad to speak to those when the commission is ready to, or certainly able to ask our technical staff who can speak more specifically to some of the nuances of season length, such as 107-day seasons, what counts on that, including youth hunts and falconry hunts and some of that nature, but some of the complexity that goes along with that. But if you have any questions of me at this point in time, I'd certainly be willing to try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Wakeling. Commissioners, let's start off by any questions you might have before we get directly into the motions. Commissioner Siebel.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Tabor. Mr. Wakeling, just a question. We saw several comments. First, I will clarify too. I did clean up my amendment on the season dates. I had missed the 2 days of youth hunting, so I did clean those up. And as a question to you, we saw several comments. We know, as I understand, 2025 is a year that we can go back and revisit with the Central and Pacific Flyway certain parameters. And I guess I wanted to ask you, what parameters are available to be changed? It sounds like we have obviously the populations are strong, especially with the geese. And if we're talking about, lowering or controlling populations, we should be talking about higher bag limits. So I guess I'm curious, the question is, what things can be considered when we go back to the Flyway, both the Central and Pacific Flyways in 2025? We saw public requests for potentially a Zone 3 in the Central Flyway. We saw a request to look at potentially splitting the Pacific Flyway north and south. And again, so a lot of really good, potential public suggestions that may make sense. And I'm just curious, what is allowed, or what can we consider in those in those 5-year meetings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and also Commissioner Siebel. I'm going to take an initial crack at this, and then I'm going to defer to Faye McNew on it, because she's, like I say, far more expert in it than I. But the first, there's the primary thing that we look at every 5 years are the zones, which counties or what the designation for the zones are. And then there's certain degrees of complexity within those zones, how many splits you can possibly have. Things like bag limits. Bag limits are things that are adjusted annually, but we're limited by what the frameworks within each of the flyways has. And so typically we'll see a minor change in perhaps both the, to my knowledge, both the Central and Pacific Flyway are predominantly within liberal season frameworks. So we're about as good as we can get in a lot of those as far as bag limits go. Sometimes by adjusting a particular season, for instance, we have a bonus teal season where we're able to get a couple of extras because of the season structure that we have. But primarily the 5-year review deals with zones and some of the splits within zones. Faye, would you care to respond on anything a little more in depth, or did I get that close enough?
I think you're spot on, Brian. The zone splits is the 5-year cycle. Bag limits for ducks are part of the adaptive harvest management plan that is set, and then goose bags are set by individual management plans. So we can be more restrictive, we cannot be more liberal.
So perhaps a different way to ask that is if we in fact, let's say, wanted to create a north and a south zone, that would have to go through the 5-year process. It wouldn't be a decision we could make today and then just adopt. It would have to go through the next 5-year cycle.
Yes, yeah, so the commission would need to have to address it at the April meeting next year. And then we would take it to the Flyway August of 2025 to be effective the 26-27 season.
Okay. So we couldn't make a change to the 25 season, even if we wanted to at this stage as it relates to zones and all that. But we can do the preparatory work necessary if we wanted to consider change in the future.
Yes.
Commissioner Siebel, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there. I just needed to understand that.
No worries, Vice Chair. I just had a follow-up for Faye or for Brian. I guess we saw some, there's, as I understand, then we can only really talk about zones and not bag limits and not additional days within the outside and inside parameter dates. But that being said, we had a lot of suggestions about that, and I guess I'd like to find out from you, what's the best way for the public to get involved? There were suggestions of stakeholder groups, working groups to really look at this, especially as we go through this 5-year cycle. And does the department have any plans to bring the public in and look at these, the potential again for that third zone in the Central Flyway or the split in the Pacific, and what are those plans? And if we don't, I'll start with that as a question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Commissioner Siebel. And yeah, the department does intend to initiate some conversations. We've already been in a conversation with a couple of groups, and we have intents to meet with them individually here in the next couple of months and talk about what their interests are. Once we get past, trying to identify what some of the interests are, our hope is also to conduct some additional human dimensions surveys and trying to see, one of the things that's often really useful about public comment is you get a really good sense for how strongly individuals feel about a specific proposal. The personal, just the visceral response is very evident. And that, if you're talking about wolves or if you're talking about the Yellowstone River closure. But what you don't get a really good idea of without some kind of a human dimension survey is the breadth of perspectives on a particular topic. And so that would be our intent moving forward. Oftentimes there's, it's like in the most recent survey we did in 2020, you can tell there's a lot of differing opinions out there. However, the plurality of folks at that point in time tended to support looking for simple, less complex season structures. That may change depending on when you provide a specific example of, hey, here's an idea. When you ask someone just to think about something hypothetically, a lot of times you don't get the same response as when you offer a suggestion and say, what do you think of this? And so Our intent would be to do some more in-depth surveys of the waterfowl hunting public, specifically and probably specifically Montana waterfowl hunters, and try to determine what their preference for and we would provide that as part of our recommendation as we come forward next year.
Follow up, Vice
Please.
Chair. Brian, just a question. If you do a statewide survey and you're asking someone in that lives in Southwest Montana about creating Zone 3 in Northeast Montana, they're not going to care. Is there a way to target the surveys to people who might, by county, or who might be more local? I know we had a lot of pushback that the survey, of course, you say you want to open a section of river. You want to open a section of river that's been closed, of course. Most people would say yes, but the people that were more familiar with the area, there was a lot of pushback. I'm curious if we can get more local on surveys that more meaningful to the stakeholders in that area as far as those statewide surveys.
Yeah, there certainly is just different techniques that we can use to try to be more specific about, number one, is this where you live? Or number two, is this where you hunt? Yeah. Because both of those are relevant perspectives, but have a difference in how they may respond. But it would be our intent to try to get the most meaningful survey data that would inform the commission making decisions.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions you have before we get to motion setting? Mr. Wakeling, I did have a question regarding the possibility of a statewide spring snow goose season. Again, looking at how these parameters work and the different ways we have to interact with the agencies. If the commission so desired to pursue something of this, what would that entail?
So I'm assuming you're speaking about the spring conservation order that currently exists in the Central Flyway?
Yes.
Okay. So this is one of those things where it really depends upon what the analysis from the various flyways are. Currently, within the Central Flyway, snow geese on their summering grounds are having a measurable negative impact on essentially the carrying capacity based on the surveys and the monitoring and analysis that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is involved with. And so because of that, within the Central Flyway, a spring conservation order is possible. However, it's also kind of looking at the trend over time. There has been some discussion about whether the need for that conservation order option still exists. It hasn't, no one's suggested removing at this point in time, but there is that discussion. Now, that's the Central Flyway. Within the Pacific Flyway, there currently is no designation that is equivalent, and consequently, a spring conservation order within the Pacific Flyway is not an option. But it is something that we discuss with the Pacific Flyway almost annually.
Okay. So in that regard, on this, as it looks, so it sounds like it's like a resource damage issue relative to the land and where the geese are holding up. And I would assume that based on climate change and other things, they're hanging out longer or whatever than they historically have, and that's why these measures are put in place. So from a survey standpoint, then it kind of relates to what Commissioner Siebel was saying. You'd want to know both from the people where the land within Montana is being effective, but also from an opportunity standpoint, most people that waterfowl, the more opportunity you can give them to waterfowl, the happier they are, obviously. So sorry, I have a frog in my throat, but I am curious as to whether or not, like if the commission wanted to take action today based on the authorization that we appear to have in front of us on the Central, we could do that. We wouldn't have to put that in sequence and wait till the February meeting if we so chose.
Mr. Chair, to be clear, the recommendation before you includes a light goose conservation order for the spring of 2025 in the Central Flyway. It is part of the recommendation. So, should the commission adopt our recommendation, that is part of it. But the conservation order, one of the what that provides us, we're not limited to the 107 days that the federal frameworks restrict us to with the general goose season. We're allowed those additional days because of the conservation order. So when the light geese are overabundant, we have that opportunity, and the commission has chosen to exercise that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? So I think what I've discussed both with the department and a couple of the commissioners is what we'd like to do is start with a motion for the department's recommendations and just get that on the books and then take amendments one at a time. So given that, I will entertain a motion for the core motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission approve the 2024-2025 migratory game bird season as presented by the department, including lifting the closure on the Yellowstone River within Region 7 and the amendment to open areas for sandhill, crane, LPT 586-01 with all other aspects regarding prior seasons adopted except for those influenced by routine calendar rotations.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Burrows and seconded by Walsh to go with the department's proposed motion. Commissioner Siebel.
Vice Chair Tabor, would you entertain a motion for an amendment? Now that we have a motion to second. I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission adopt the following amendment to the proposed 2024 migratory bird regulations. Retain the closure on waterfowl hunting on the 87-mile portion of the Yellowstone River between the confluence of Bighorn and Yellowstone Rivers to the Rosebud-Custer County line that has been in place since 1958.
Second.
A second.
The first amendment was moved by Commissioner Siebel and seconded by Commissioner Lane. Do you want, I guess what we'll do is we'll take a vote on that first before we move on to your other amendments. Is there any discussion or conversation regarding that particular amendment to the core motion? Commissioner Lane.
Thank you, Chair Tabor. When I first started kind of researching this, opening this closure up, it appeared at the time, biologically, they said there was absolutely no detrimental effect to opening it back up. It was just creating more opportunity for sportsmen. However, after visiting more, and Commissioner Siebel and I had visited about this, we found that this became more of a social concern. There is that issue with worries about those who live on the Yellowstone River in that area, that they felt this was going to create more conflict. And but as Mr. Wakeling had indicated, there's still access on the river, whether or not this closure is in place or not. So, like I say, with the outpouring of support for keeping the closure in place, I will support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lane. Any other comments by commissioners? For my part, first of all, I want to applaud the department. Anytime the department or the commission is looking to expand opportunity, that's a good thing, whether it's fishing or hunting. As we all know, the more opportunity, it spreads crowds out and it makes the rich resource what it is. And so I too, like Commissioner Lane, was excited that we were actually providing what appeared to be a real material increase in opportunity for waterfowl enthusiasts. But what I've heard through the testimony and all that is that it's going to create kind of a firestorm, and that we're fixing a problem that doesn't need to be fixed. So, and what was more made clear to me is that, at least for right now, access really isn't an issue for sportsmen. Now we're talking specifically about waterfowl. So accessing for deer and elk and getting on folks' land and asking for permission, that's a whole different story when we're doing it for ungulates. But in the case of waterfowl, it's my understanding that between what's available in block management, plus just folks that have property, when you're looking to have an opportunity to hunt waterfowl, there's some pretty good cooperation in and around that area, and affords opportunity already. That, and then the dynamics that seemingly will change if a lot of pressure's been put on the river, and then it starts effectuating the benefits of where you would ordinarily hunt and how you would hunt this area. That seems pretty compelling to me. So that's why I believe that Commissioner Siebel's amendment is appropriate. Commissioner Siebel?
Thank you, Vice Chair Tabor. And I should have made these comments after my motion, but as you saw in my write-up, I spent a lot of time as well, like Bill, talking to people, talking to landowners and stakeholders and outfitters and hunters and people that just kind of it being in Region 5, and obviously this is in Bill's region, getting lots of feedback from people around here. And I was taken aback by, we have 66 years of this closure, and it's definitely become part of the pattern and part of the success. And maybe some, what some have said to some of the best field hunting in Montana and maybe in the region. And so that's, as I said in my rationale, that the rationale from my perspective was, and I stealing quotes, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I think to your point, this is actually a good thing for the state, and having some areas like we do other areas that are closed to waterfowl hunting, to offer a place for the birds to roost overnight or to nest or to go overnight is a good thing. Whether or not it was going to have, whether or not the birds would stay, whether they go, it's been this way for 66 years, and it's working really well. And that was why I chose to put the amendment in that I did. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding this amendment? So Eric, would it help for you to put the amendment up so the commissioners know exactly what they're voting on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Stand by and I'll do just that.
Eric, I had sent that language, the cleaned up language to, yeah, that's perfect.
So right now we're just focusing on amendment number 1, which is the closure. Commissioner Siebel's motion was to amend the original motion that was put on the table by Commissioner Burrows to strike the portion of opening that 87-mile closure. Everybody clear on what we're voting on? So based on that, all those in favor of this amendment to the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Commissioner Siebel, do you want to roll into your second amendment?
Thank you, Chair Tabor. My second amendment, and I'll make the motion and I'll do a little explanation. I move the Fish Wildlife Commission adopt the following amendment to the proposed 2024 migratory bird regulations. And Eric, if you could bring that screen back up. What I'm doing is change the proposed season dates in Zone 2 of the Central Flyway for 2024 and to ducks from September 28, 2024 to October 6 for the first season, and then October 26, 2024 to January 21, 2025. Geese would be September 28, 2024 to October 6, 2024, and then the split, the October 26, 2024 to January 29th, 2025. The youth and duck geese season would stay the same, September 21st to the 22nd, 2024. And then falconry ducks and falconry geese would match the duck and geese dates above. So these dates that you see in front of you are correct. I did make a correction to my original motion to make sure I accommodated the extra 2 days for the youth hunt. So this does have 107 days.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Siebel and seconded by Commissioner Lane for the second amendment. And Commissioner Siebel, could you just point out what's different, what you
Right.
did here?
Yes, thank you, Chair Tabor. So there was requests, and I believe we saw this in writing from Moga in the public comments, or we had received that as a commission email, and also from a working group. I think it was the Sweetgrass Working Group. So there's a request. There's a lot of what appear to be missed hunting opportunities in the late season. Mostly a lot of it with ducks. And so what the idea here, and so there was a request to move back in the Central Flyway Zone 2 the second season by 2 whole weeks. And I looked at that, contemplated that, made some sense, and then also got feedback from other people, outfitters, stakeholders in the area who enjoy the early hunting season. There's still, there's plenty of geese around at that point in time, but also had, outfitters that had clients booked already. So what I came up with was a compromise. Essentially, this proposal moves the season 1 week, the second part of the season for ducks and geese, 1 week later than what was in the original proposal, not 2, just 1. So that's what, so instead of a 12-day closure in between, now you'll have a 19-day closure, but it does extend the season 7 more days in January for both ducks and geese.
Thanks for that explanation, Commissioner Siebel. Any questions, commissioners, relative to this amendment? Okay, given that, we'll take a vote on this amendment. All those in favor of the second amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe that is all the amendments that we have. Do we have any other amendments to the core motion? Okay, so based on that, what we can do is any other general comments before we go out to public comment? Let's then go to public comment, and we'll start by the regional offices. Anybody in the regions have anybody that would like to testify on the waterfowl motions?
It doesn't matter. Vice Chair Tabor, Region 5 has one person.
Great. Go ahead, Region 5. Turn on your camera and your mic, and we're ready for you.
Yep, you're set.
Okay. Good morning, Vice Chair Tabor and members of the commission. My name is Robert Koenigsfeld, and I'm a Montana waterfowler. It looks like you guys have kind of already decided, but I am in favor of keeping the Yellowstone closure between Bighorn Confluence and Rosebud County line. And I'd like to speak for future generations of waterfowl hunters that keeping this closure would be a great success for them too, to allow them to have the same opportunity that I've had in this state as a waterfowler. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any other testifiers within the regions? Eric, do we have anybody in the public comment queue?
Sorry for the delay, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Chairman. I have 6 that would like to comment, starting with Steve Christian.
Great. Go ahead, Mr. Christian.
Good morning, Vice Chair Tabor and commissioners. My name is Steve Christian, Christian. Like to thank you for the motions that have just passed. I have a long prepared statement I don't even have to go into. I am an avid waterfowler. I've hunted this area for 40 plus years. And I also have a place up in the far northeast in Medicine Lake. So waterfowl hunting is all I do. I'm passionate about it. So I'd like to thank everybody along the Yellowstone River and all you Montana conservation staff and commissioners. This is a true conservation success story. The landowners that initiated the closure back in the day, the Harold Miller and the Morrison Norris Coles, back in 1958, I was really surprised that their grandchildren are still carrying the torches. When I met with some of their grandkids recently, they still feel the same way that their grandparents did about the resource. Also, like to thank Brett Dorak and Steve Atwood, the biologists in Region 7. They have really raised the awareness of Eastern Montana waterfowl hunting with everybody with what came up. I believe they believe in what they proposed, but I believe there's a real economic and social impacts that would have been involved there. So thank you. What I know about the landowners, the business interests, the outfitters, the waterfowlers that I've visited with, that they're positive keeping the closure in place. They all love Canada geese and everything that goes along with it. As far as the waterfowl seasons coming up, yeah, I support the Zone 2 extension. I also support FWP getting these working committees together to look at the season structures for both flyways going into the 2025 season. Now is the time to get started. Doesn't, you know, a year from now, we'll go pretty fast. So appreciate that. One other thing, snow goose hunting in the Central Flyway.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Next testifier.
Mr. Chairman, I have Dan Vermillion.
Mr. Vermillion, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Dan Vermillion here. I live in Livingston. I grew up in Billings and wanted to thank both Commissioner Siebel and Commissioner Lane for their amendment and their modification to the original proposal from the department. Thank you. I mean, I think it's been said several times. I'm sure you got a lot of public comment, but this is a truly special part of the river. It's an incredible waterfowling and field hunting opportunity that you'll be hard pressed to find anywhere else. And in the places where you can find it out of state, you'll find it is a pretty expensive game to get into for the average hunter. And, you know, from a biological perspective, I'm sure that there's strong indication that this will not have an initial biological outcome or impact, but over time, especially in a year like this, where we can all see that the drought's going to probably be pretty tough, having a river like the Yellowstone with adequate water that gives a place for these birds to rest. Once they get South Montana, the going gets even tougher. And over time, it's these sort of refuges that will allow hunting for the general public to continue in Montana. And I really appreciate this commission support or approval of the modification to the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next testifier.
Mr. Chairman, I have a Samsung phone with no name attached.
Go ahead, Mr. Samsung phone. Hello, do you hear us? Eric, what do they have to do? Do they have
Hello?
to, there you go. Go right
Sorry
ahead.
about that.
Please state your name and for the record.
It is Mike Klingan, Clingan. I've written comment to you guys, commissioners. Thank you for your service. Waterfowling is very important to me. It's part of how I make my living. And we are missing a lot of opportunity in the Pacific Flyway with not having zones like we do in the Central Flyway. It could create a lot of opportunity for revenue for communities by having split seasons for a north zone and a south zone. Gives hunters more opportunity. I would like you guys to continue to investigate that. I would be more than happy to be on a committee. And I'd also like to investigate Pacific Flyway snow goose season. Our neighboring states, Washington, Utah, Idaho, all have a spring snow goose season, and they are in the Pacific Flyway. So I would like to see why we can't do that. And that's all I have today.
Thank you very much. Next person.
Mr. Chairman, I have Jeff Lucas.
Go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
Hi, thank you. Vice Chair Tabor, members of the commission, I'm Jeff Lucas with Montana Wildlife Federation. I'd like to start by stating that MWF supports proposed regulations regarding crane harvest and adjusting the waterfowl split season date in Zone 2 of the Central Flyway Zone by 1 week later. For the Yellowstone, The Federation has reviewed comments and data provided by FWP regarding the proposal to end the waterfowl hunting closure on the Yellowstone River and Commissioner Siebel's amendment to keep the closure in place, which we support. We also spoke with folks that hunt adjacent ag fields in that stretch of river. Our initial impression was that more access to waterfowl hunting is a positive action, and it would disperse hunters from accessible areas and reduce hunter crowding on publicly accessible lands and waters. While opposing the end of the closure has the appearance of catering to landowners and outfitters that hunt ag fields in this stretch, we do understand that isn't necessarily the case, and this issue is way more nuanced than simply access versus no access. Having hunted that area for geese, I understand the unique, high-quality hunting opportunity that it represents and how a change to waterfowl behavior due to hunting pressure on the river would drastically reduce the quality of hunting. Meanwhile, goose populations in that area are trending to a level that may be unsustainable in the future. A hunting closure that exists has no biological basis, but there may be a point in the future when waterfowl populations there do need to be reduced and pressured in ways that disperse them more widely, but that's definitely not the case right now. I want to applaud FWP for its attempt to open access to waterfowl opportunities, and at the same time, we applaud Commissioner Siebel for listening to the sizable majority of the public that spoke up on this issue. We've weighed the benefits of opening hunting opportunities there with the benefits of the unique, high-quality hunt that exists and the ways it could be negatively impacted, and we find ourselves weighing social issues rather than biological issues. MWF supports keeping the closure in place, but we do understand that this issue may be revisited in the future if it does become more of a biological issue. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Mr. Chairman, I have Neil Cote, C-O-T-E.
Go ahead, Mr. Cote.
Thanks, Commission members, for hearing me. I appreciate your guys' passage of that bill for that closure. Closures are super important for waterfowl, especially local populations versus migratory populations. I see that across the state. I've been hunting waterfowl in the state for over 40 years. I hunt from pretty much border to border. Having those closures in place like that one on the Yellowstone River provides a place for the birds to congregate and to basically imprint on. Then those birds not pressured basically provide opportunity as they go out into the fields. So it basically falls on the waterfowl hunter to find locations to hunt. I think in the future, like the previous gentleman just talked about, depredation of waterfowl is a huge thing. I see that from Pacific Flyway to Central Flyway. I would say that half of the hunting locations that I hunt on private land, I'm trying to help landowners remove waterfowl, both ducks and geese, and it's various crops from winter wheat to corn to harvested wheat fields. Birds in populations like that, in local populations, are predating on farmers' fields. They just don't get a voice to talk about it. That's one issue. Cranes are another issue, both in the Pacific and the Central Flyway. I've seen in the last 15 years more cranes, sandhill cranes, both lesser cranes and Rocky Mountain population cranes, in the Nine Pipes area, Pablo, Kicking Horse, all the way through the system. I saw sandhill cranes this year until January. There was birds that did not leave, like the Moise Valley or the Missoula Valley. So cranes need to be an issue that need to be addressed. They need to be looked at. I would also be in favor of the Pacific Flyway, the snow goose conservation season, and going forward with that. There's a lot of hurdles in there for, providing opportunity for both, bird watching people, the bird watching public Audubon, and waterfowlers, but it would be a very valid thing to do. That population, it's a quarter of the population of lesser snow geese that migrate through freeze out. So when you consider the Central Flyway snow goose, they're gone. They basically blow through before that season can even be in effect. So we're going to
thank you very much, Mr. Cote. Your time is up, but appreciate your comments.
Mr. Chair, I have Moga Office.
Go ahead.
Vice Chair Tabor and members of the commission, I am Will Israel with the Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. We applaud the commission and Commissioner Siebel on retaining this restriction of the waterfowl hunting area there along the 87 miles of the Yellowstone River. We think that's the right move, and we think that's the effective management procedure for retaining great populations there for waterfowl in that area. It's a very historical area, and we applaud that. We also endorse the proposal for the Second Amendment of the 2024 migratory regulations by splitting the season week 1 later in zone 2 of the Central Flyway for both ducks and dark geese. This proposal makes complete sense to MOGA by increasing waterfowl hunting opportunities in zone 2. With all amendments, our top priority in MOGA is to thoroughly assess the status of natural resources in each proposal. In this case, there is a robust population of ducks and geese, and this provides greater opportunities for youth hunters and regular season hunters, and we support that. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other commenters?
Mr. Chairman, I have Mike Colpo.
Go ahead, Mr. Colpo. Mr. Colpo, we're ready for you. I believe you need to unmute. Eric, remind me, what do they have to do to unmute? Do they have to push the star?
Mr. Chairman, he shows unmuted at this time.
Huh. Sorry, Mr. Colpo, we're not hearing anything you're saying. Okay, while he tries to figure out his situation, is there anybody else in the queue?
I have no other speakers at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Colpo, that you didn't have the opportunity. I might want to look into that for the next time. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go right ahead, Eric.
We've lost Commissioner Siebel temporarily. I don't know if you want to postpone until he's able to reboot, sir.
Okay. And waiting for Mr. Siebel or Commissioner Siebel to get back online. Mr. Colpo, there he is. You had to do something. Looks like you had to pull something out of the hat there, huh, Commissioner Siebel?
Yes. Technical difficulty.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you. All right. So based on that, commissioners, any other further questions of staff or of the motion setters? I did have one clarification, Mr. Wakeling, just from the standpoint that it came up again relative to the Pacific Flyway and as it relates to spring geese and the can you just cover that one more time, because it gets so confusing, but is that or is that not really eligible right now for late spring geese?
Mr. Chair, and I may actually defer to Ken McDonald at this point. He is our representative to the Pacific Flyway. If he would care to comment, but my understanding is that there is no provision currently, and this is based on a conversation that I had specifically with Todd Sanders, who is our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service representative on the Pacific Flyway, that there is not currently an option for the department to select or for the commission to select a spring goose conservation order within the Pacific Flyway. And Ken, I don't know if you have anything more on that.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, that's my understanding as well. There's no conservation order in place for the Pacific Flyway and would need to go through a whole federal process to get one for the Flyway that then the Montana portion could fall under. So what Brian said is my belief as well.
So when we talk about process then, and I think one of the commenters had indicated that neighboring states do have that opportunity. Is it because those states were successful in reaching out to the feds and getting the approval for that? And that would be something Montana would have to do in order to get a like kind opportunity available in Montana.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just looking at the central flyway, there's this conservation order. It's different than a hunting season. It's a conservation order directed towards, a specific population management objective related to overabundance of spring geese. And so that required that order to be developed by the Fish and Wildlife Service, adopted by the Fish and Wildlife Service, that the states could tap into. So there is no such thing for the Pacific Flyway. So I'm not sure that I'd have to do a little research into what the speaker referenced with Idaho and a spring snow goose season for those other states, but it wouldn't be under a conservation order.
Okay.
May I hop in on there?
Yes, please.
So the light goose federal frameworks of the regular season in those states extends to March 10th. So it's not a spring conservation order, it's part of their regular season. So Montana could pursue a slightly later light goose season, but it would then cause our goose seasons to have different dates.
So it'd be a similar type of adjustment of what we did in the central, where we would have to move it back a little bit in order to capture those earlier days in March.
Correct.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Any other questions of clarification or anything that came up? All right. So Eric, if you wouldn't mind putting back up on screen what we're voting on. We're essentially taking the core motion presented by the department with the two amendments, one of which is essentially keeping the YRC closed, and the second one doing the date changes as articulated here in the motion. Everybody clear on what we're voting on? The entire package. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody. That was great work. Thank you for Faye and Brian and everybody on that. Lots of hard work put into that one. Appreciate it. As I understand it, Mr. McDonald is going to be presenting on the forest issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This next issue is we're looking for approval from the Commission for the 2023 annual sustainable yield calculation. This pertains to our forest management program and a statute that says we have a requirement to update every 5 years our what is called the annual sustainable yield calculation, or the amount of additional growth that could be harvested sustainably on FWP lands. This was first done in 2013, and then again, a 5-year update in 2018 as required by statute, and then this next 5-year adjustment at the end of 2023. And what that sustainable yield calculation does is it summarizes changes to FWP's forested land base, amount of growth, and annual sustainable yield potentials for these lands. For the 5-year period, our forester did the recalculation from the initial 2013 calculation. He determined there's the annual sustainable yield is about 4.1 million board feet per year in the short term, which is between now and 50 years. And then that drops to 3.6 million board feet in 50 years and beyond. This is a slight reduction from the previous sustainable yield calculation of 66 million board feet in the short term. The main purpose of this sustainable yield calculation is give us an idea of what's just what it says, a sustainable yield, sustainable harvest yield. And then it also helps us ensure we don't exceed that sustainable yield calculation, which is a statutory requirement as well, that we not exceed that sustainable yield. So to be compliant with statute, we're seeking approval of the 2023 sustainable yield calculation for the next 5-year period. And then I have online here, we have Jason Park, who is FWP's forester, that if you have any technical questions about that, he's here to help me out with the technical questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Park, I do have a question for you, and as it relates to the model. So, how much length do you get, how much mileage, I should say, do you get out of your computer modeling to the point where it starts to become less accurate? Because now we're working off of a 10-year plus age on this model before you actually do a full-blown new inventory. How much more life do you think we have in this model where it might affect the accuracy of the yield calculation?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you for the question. Yeah, it is a good question, and we have had internal discussions about doing a re-inventory, a resurvey of our lands and rerunning that calculation through the computer model. But at this point in time, we felt pretty confident. There hasn't been drastic change in the conditions on the landscape. Sure, we've had some insects and disease mortality, some wildfire, but it hasn't not been extensive enough to really warrant rerunning that model. We've also better understood the types of silvicultural practices that we can use to meet the forestry statute. So that should be a consideration at some point, but at this point in time, we feel like unless we see some drastic change, we're pretty confident that the model is still useful basis for redoing these 5-year updates.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any other further questions or?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Just a question on the numbers, because it seems like, I heard that there was a slight decrease on the sustainable yield calculation. Am I missing something? We're saying 4.1 million board feet sustainable yield for short term. And that's a decrease from 2018 by 66 million board feet.
Mr. Park.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I see there is a typo in the commission agenda item. 4.1 million board feet. The abbreviation for that is MMBF, so 2 M's. So that's 4.1 million board feet. The 2018 update resulted in a reduction of 66,000 board feet. So that's 1,000 MBF.
I was just making sure, because when I heard there was a slight decrease of 2,000%, whatever the numbers come out to, I'm like, that's more than a slight decrease. So
yeah, I see that now. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, everybody's seen a standard log truck. 4.1 million board feet is about 976 standard log truck loads, give or take. That reduction of 66,000 board feet is equivalent to about 16 logging truck loads. So just a slight reduction there. Yeah, thanks for catching that.
Any other questions?
just I would just have one follow-up, and that would be what is the reason for the decrease? I mean, was it fire or something going on out there that made the yield less now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in rerunning the in part of this update process was essentially to look at all the lands that we added. For example, Bad Rock Canyon Wildlife Management Area by Columbia Falls, Big Snowy Mountains Wildlife Management Area east of Harlowton. So we had those additional lands. We added some other minor parcels to some of our existing land base. But we also found that there were some lands that were included in the initial calculation in 2013. For example, Lone Pines, Wild Horse Island State Park, which is in the middle of Flathead Lake. That was in our calculation Obviously, with that being in the middle of the lake, it's going to be difficult to harvest logs and get them to land and take them to the mill. So we decided to remove all of Wild Horse Island from the calculation. Those are productive timberlands in Region 1, whereas we added some less productive timberlands east of the divide. So when it came to the balance, it ended up in a slight reduction there. And so those are the reasons why that slight reduction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Seabull.
Chair Tabor, I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission approve the annual sustainable yield calculation as presented by FWP.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Seabull, a second by Commissioner Lane. Any other questions? Go out to public comment. Is there anybody in the regional offices that have comments on the sustainable yield motion? Hearing none. Eric, anybody online?
I have no commenters online, Mr. Chair.
All right. We'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Part. Okay, next up, let's see what we got here. We're going to move to Parks and Rec. Commissioners, are you okay? Do you need a bio break of any type? Not hearing any crying or whining, so I assume we can keep going. Deb, are you on the line? Are you ready to go into Parks and Rec for us?
I am, Vice Chair Tabor.
Please proceed.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Vice Chair Tabor, Commissioners, Director, Deb O'Neill, Acting Division Administrator for Parks and Outdoor Rec for FWP. I have three, I'm hopeful, very simple items for you this morning. The first one, they're all actually annual rules that we've brought to you, given by the name annually. And they should be fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot of changes in these this time around. The first one is regarding commercial use permit fees. So this is commercial use, not public. So commercial use permit fees, and these are at fishing access site and wildlife management areas. We have another commercial use fee that's for parks. This is just for fishing access site and WMAs. These expired at the end of 2023, and during the changeover in administrators, we just missed this, but luckily we're not proposing any changes to the rule. We received 2 public comments online since we posted, and they were both one was in support of reestablishing the rule, and one was in support of increasing the commercial use fees. And we haven't received any other public comment, and we recommend that you renew the existing commercial use permit fee for fishing access sites and wildlife management areas as presented with no changes.
Okay, commissioners, any questions?
Chair Tabor.
Yes.
I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission renew the existing commercial use permit fee rule for fishing access sites and wildlife management areas with no changes for the 2024 calendar year.
I second.
Then moved by Commissioner Lane and seconded by Commissioner Brook. Any additional questions or comments? We'll go out to public comment. Anybody in the regions have comments regarding the fee structure? Appears to be none. Eric, anybody in the queue?
I have no online commenters at this time, Mr. Chair.
All right, based on that, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up, Deb.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. The next one we have is the Fishing Access Site Annual Rule. And this was adopted last April by the Commission. This rule establishes special recreation permit fees and fees for this is public use at fishing access sites only. And also competitive events on the Blackfoot and Madison Rivers. As you know, we took the last few years to develop consolidated public use rules that you approved in December, and they are now ARM rules. And the parts of this FAS rule that were included in that ARM were removed, and the rest of the language or the cleanup or the rest of the changes were just cleanup. There were no major changes in this rule at all, and no fees were changed. We received one public comment, and it wasn't germane to this at all. It was about something completely different. So really the only changes here are word changes, cleanup, and removing rules that were included in the consolidated public use rules. We do recommend that the Commission reapproves these rules for one more year, and otherwise they would expire.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Mr. Vice Chairman,
Commissioner Burrows.
just a general comment, and that is if you don't continue to increase fees commensurate with like inflation, use some sort of factor, at some point, it seems like you get to that point where you reevaluate fees and then you have to do maybe a more major adjustment, which there might be a little more shock and awe with. And another question I guess I would have too in regards to fees, is it not easier at some point maybe to look at round bills more than single dollars? And I don't know if there is any benefit to that, but like you get into some of these fees that are say $18, does it not make more sense to just maybe round that to $20 so somebody doesn't have to bring change to that and they can maybe use a $20 bill? I don't know, but I guess those are my two comments, is maybe looking at and even like $7.50 per night versus 8 or 10. It seems like it might make more sense to go round dollar amounts that are either 5, 10, 20, and then just looking at increasing those fees so there's not a large increase at some point in the future.
For Vice Chair Tabor, Commissioner Burrows, good questions. We will be looking at a fee assessment, a holistic fee assessment for commercial use and public use. We have done that in the past couple of years. We decided not to bring forward any fee increases, but that doesn't mean we won't in the future. And I have definitely done my share of donations to Parks and Outdoor Rec by rounding up myself and just leaving a bigger dollar amount in the envelope because I didn't have any change as well. So that is a consideration. We will be looking at potentially doing different ways to collect these fees in the future, so it doesn't have to be cash. But for right now it is cash, but we will certainly take that into advisement when we look at increasing fees, potentially increasing fees.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Brooke.
I move the Fish and Wildlife Commission adopt the FAS annual rule with the proposed changes.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Brooke, a second by Commissioner Lane. Any other questions or comments? Go out to public comment. Anybody in the regional offices? Seeing none. Anybody in the queue, Eric?
I have no hands raised at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, based on that, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Last topic.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The last one is exceptions to the winter closure dates for WMAs. like I said, as you know, we completed a consolidation of public use rules. And those public use rules defined closure dates for wildlife management areas. And these I'm presenting you are exceptions to those. Some of these are carry forwards from past years that you have already approved, and others are either removing them from the exception. We have two, B and C, that we're removing from the exception, and one we are adding to the exception. The first two, the Blackfoot Clearwater and Calf Creek, we are removing them for shifting to the standard closing for an opening at May 15th at noon for both of these WMAs. One is because there's no longer a different season. The opening date, I'm sorry, I'm getting that confused, sorry. Calf Creek, I'll start with. Calf Creek has historically been opening on April 15th, but in the past few years, we've been noticing displacement of elk off the WMA because of recreational activities prior to that date. So we would like to shift that date to the general season opener, which is May 15th at noon. The other one, the Blackfoot Clearwater, historically closed earlier because there was a unique hunting season length in Hunting District 282, and that's modified now and it conforms with our general season. So we'd like to move those to the general opening and closing dates and remove them from the exception list. And the one that we would like to add to the exception list is Ray Coons. It is a white-tailed deer forested winter range, but the white-tailed deer typically disperse by mid-April. So we'd like to open this WMA a little bit earlier to allow public to take advantage of the spring turkey hunting opportunities on that WMA. The rest of them that are not crossed out or underlined, those are the ones that are just carried forward from year after year. If you have any questions on why those exist, Ken McDonald is still on and he can answer those questions for you. And we did receive quite a few public comments, about a dozen on these, and all were in support of the changes.
Great. Commissioners, any questions or comments regarding this particular motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that I'm supportive of removing the two Region 2 WMAs off the list, both Blackfoot, Clearwater, and Calf Creek. And in discussions, especially on the Calf Creek, with the biologists down here, we are seeing some impacts from getting in there early on that elk winter range areas. So I think it's a good stroke of business. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move the Fish Wildlife Commission adopt a biennial rule. As a biennial rule, the game winter closure date exceptions as presented by FWP.
Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Burrows and seconded by Commissioner Siebel. Any other additional questions or comments? Okay, let's go out to public comment. Any of the regional offices have commenters relative to this motion? Mr. Wickman, anybody on the phone?
I have Jeff Lucas, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tabor, members of the commission, I'm Jeff Lucas with the Montana Wildlife Federation. MWF supports adjusting each of the WMA open closure dates listed. Most of these deal with recreationists and shed hunters that wind up disturbing elk and deer on their wintering grounds, while another one will provide a spring turkey hunt where deer security is not an issue. Each of these modifications show that FWP is taking winter range and ungulate security into consideration when allowing the public onto these grounds, and we applaud this effort. As fun and lucrative as shed hunting may be, it should not come at the expense of animal security on WMA wintering grounds. Pushing elk and deer around and sometimes off of these WMAs at a time when energy conservation for elk and deer is essential can lead to unnecessary stress on animals. This can easily be mitigated through these adjustments to these specific WMAs opening dates for public access. MWF would also encourage FWP to coordinate with adjacent public land managers on closure dates to help with enforcement and, most importantly, wildlife security. We truly do appreciate FWP standing up for the essence of why some of these WMAs were created in the first place, which is a place of refuge for game animals when they need it most. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Any other commenters?
Mr. Chairman, I have no further commenters online.
All right, well then, any other comments or questions from the commission? All right, so we will call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Fantastic. That is essentially the everything on our meeting agenda. I will now open it for public comment, items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody in the regional offices that would like to make a comment regarding any matter that's not on the agenda? Appears we have none. Eric, is there anybody in the queue that is waiting to make a comment?
I have no hands raised in the queue at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate everybody's efforts. Again, thank you to FWB staff and everybody in attendance to the meeting. Everybody did a great job. We appreciate it. Have a great spring, and we will see everybody in June. I officially declare this meeting closed.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Care.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.